This is George Nada. Laid off after 10 years of work, he had to pack his few belongings and leave his hometown in search of employment. He arrived in Los Angeles with high hopes, but soon gets discouraged. The job center is full of people in the same situation, and his story is met with indifference. The only accommodation he can afford tonight is the street. He can hear the TV in someone's living room. There's a woman talking about fame and glamour, but it's a little hard for him to relate. In the morning, George goes to a construction site to offer his services. After a little insistence, the supervisor agrees to give him a chance. Of course, the work is exhausting and the pay is ridiculous, but hey, at least he got a gig. When the day's work is over, his boss sees him getting all comfy and says that spending the night is strictly forbidden. Also, George won't get paid until Thursday. One of the workers is a man named Frank. He takes pity on the new guy and tells him of a place where he can stay. Life has taught George to suspect everyone, but the mention of a hot meal makes him reconsider that lesson. Frank takes him to an improvised camp for the homeless where everyone contributes the way they can. Gilbert is the man in charge. He's happy to welcome George if he can help fix the showers. Over dinner, Frank says he's from Detroit. He had to leave his wife and kids there after the massive layoffs made it impossible to find work. George can see that hardship has made Frank a bitter man with a broken spirit. At night, everyone is gathered in front of the TV when something bizarre happens. The transmission is interrupted and a bearded man appears on the screen. He says, "Humans need to wake up. We are under the control of an alien race, and they've been hiding in plain sight. The resistance movement picked up the signals they are using to brainwash the population." The people from the shelter seem to be more annoyed than worried. It's not the first time this guy hijacked primetime, and they don't really like him. Apart from the interruption, there's also the headaches. It happens to everyone at the same time whenever the transmission is disrupted like that. Standing behind the rest of the people, a blind priest seems to be affected in a different way. He is mouthing the words that the bearded man sang, and at the exact same time. It almost looks like the text is being broadcast through him. Gilbert makes him snap out of it, and they go into the church. The next day, George asks about the noises coming from the church until 4 a.m. Gilbert says it was choir practice. Now, George is sure that this guy's up to something. Tiptoeing into the church, he sees a message on the wall. "They live, we sleep." He realizes that this is actually the resistance headquarters. Behind that wall, Gilbert is discussing the next steps with the other rebels, and the bearded man is there too. Suddenly, George is cornered by the blind priest. After feeling his hands, the man concludes he is a hard worker and immediately invites him to join the rebels. Too scared to entertain the offer, George quickly finds an exit instead. There is a helicopter circling the area, and Gilbert comes out to check it out. Moments later, the rebels begin to move a bunch of boxes. George is watching them from a safe distance. Frank comes near him to ask what's going on. He tells him what he saw. Frank's survival instinct is much stronger than his curiosity. Trouble is the last thing he needs, especially now that he has a job. He tells George to leave it alone. He ignores the advice completely, keeping watch until night falls. When that same chopper comes back, a symphony of sirens is also heard. The camp is surrounded in a few seconds. Riot police march into the place while a bulldozer makes sure nothing is left standing. The people are desperate and confused. There's no sign of Gilbert, but both the blind priest and the bearded man get singled out and beaten. George and a few others manage to hide until morning. The indestructible TV is still there when they come back, and the frivolity of the commercials is almost an insult in this situation. While some people try to salvage what they can, George goes into the church to investigate. The place is completely trashed. Luckily, one of those mysterious boxes is still there. He grabs it quickly and takes it to the back alley for some privacy. But when he opens the box, it's filled with sunglasses. Definitely not what he expected. He takes a pair for himself before dumping the box disappointedly. However, those are not ordinary sunglasses. When he puts them on, he is able to see a completely different reality. Everything is black and white. Pictures are replaced by imperative commands in a totalitarian tone. George is terrified to realize that it's not a trick, and it's not even an alternative dimension. This is the real world, the one he had never seen before. And behind every billboard and every magazine cover, there is a message that urges him to surrender and just do as he's told. And that's not all. Some people have a different face when he looks at them through the special glasses. If you can call that a face, that is. George walks along a busy avenue paying attention to these creatures. For every 2 or 3 regular people, there is one of them. And the regular people are the ones serving or working for them, never the other way around. Crazy as it seemed at first, that bearded man was right. These are the aliens he was talking about. Finally reaching his limit, George begins to insult an alien lady at the supermarket. To his astonishment, she begins to speak into her wristwatch, referring to him as a seer. Realizing he made a huge mistake, he runs out of the store. All the aliens are looking at him now, and it's not long before he's approached by the cops. Refusing to get in the car, George fights them off and grabs their guns. Wearing an arsenal of weapons, he decides to go to the bank, of all places. Here, only a few people can be called as such. Disgusted by the extent of the deception, George begins to fire at the monstrous aliens. He finds out that their watches can also teleport them, as if they weren't hard enough to fight without that. Outnumbered and equipped with much more inferior tech, our hero makes the wise decision to retreat. But of course, he'll do that in style. While the entire LAPD is swarming the block, George kidnaps a young woman named Holly. He makes her take him to her place so he can hide from the authorities. Holly doesn't believe his crazy theories and refuses to try the sunglasses. When she mentions her job at the TV station, George remembers what the bearded man said and finally connects the dots. The TV signal is controlled by the aliens, and they're using it to brainwash the locals. Carried away by such an epiphany, he momentarily forgets about the hostage. Holly takes that chance to attack and throws him out the window. Now the police are coming and his sunglasses are ruined, so George finds a place to hide for the night. In the morning, he goes back to the construction site to find Frank. His friend is simply furious. George is a notorious outlaw since he opened fire inside a crowded bank last afternoon. He tries to explain that his victims were not people, but it's hard to sell that theory without any proof. But then he remembers the box from yesterday. Running to the alley, he gets there just in time to see the garbage truck about to leave. He jumps into the trash and frantically goes through the filth. The good news is that he is able to retrieve a few of those special glasses. The bad news is that Frank had followed him here. He is appalled to see his coworker coming out of the trash and firmly refuses to listen to any more of his nonsense. With no time for diplomacy, George resorts to violence. Frank fights back, and they keep at it for much longer than necessary, probably taking out their frustrations on each other. Finally, George has an opportunity to slam a pair of glasses on his face. Frank's attitude is immediately changed, and he agrees to help George at last. They find Gilbert at a motel nearby and reveal that they know his secret. Glad to have more allies, he tells them to join a rebel meeting tonight. The plan is to hack the alien signal and lift the mind control over humans, but they need to be careful. At the meeting, Frank and George are given special contact lenses to replace the sunglasses. Now they can spot the aliens at all times. Someone has also smuggled in one of the alien watches, but they don't know how it works. George agrees to wear it, just in case. He is very surprised to see Holly among the rebels. She is holding the special glasses and has obviously learned the truth. Her apology is interrupted by a police raid. George opens a portal with the alien watch and manages to save Frank, but now Holly is missing. There's no time to look for her now, so the two friends have to jump into the portal. They end up in a secret tunnel underneath the TV station, which turns out to be the alien headquarters. There's noise coming from one of the rooms, so they decide to check it out. To their complete horror, the room is full of real humans who are celebrating the alien invasion. These traitors were recruited to betray their own kind in exchange for money and power. A guy from the shelter recognizes Frank and George, but he thinks that they're traitors too. Excited to show off his new lifestyle, he's happy to answer all their questions and even take them on a tour. Then he reveals that the signal is coming from this very building. There is a transmitter on the roof. Frank and George then reveal their true intentions, and the traitor quickly teleports somewhere else. Spotted by the authorities, the two friends begin to fight their way up each floor. Holly shows up when they're about to reach the roof, and it turns out that she was a traitor all along. She shoots Frank in cold blood and then tries to stop George too. Luckily, he is faster than her. George manages to blow up the transmitter right before the helicopter arrives. As the alien cops open fire, our hero goes down with dignity. But fortunately, not in vain. The signal is cut, and the aliens' true faces are instantly exposed everywhere at the same time. And that's a wrap. Make sure to check out more of our sci-fi recaps. Thank you for watching.